Word up, amigos and amigas. It's your boy Reese back once again with another Ramble from Control-Alt-Reese. This is episode 14. And I just wanted to start out by giving a very quick shout out to Lee Smith's Workshop, who is a fellow retro tech YouTuber, who repairs stuff and builds stuff. And he does lots of 3D printing stuff as well. And a couple of months back, he got in touch with me. Well, I say got in touch with me. I've been chatting to him for quite a while now about various stuff behind the scenes. But a couple of months back, he sent me a message about my Atari 2800 video. The Atari 2800, of course, being an Atari console that was released in Japan. It was a Japan exclusive for a while until Sears brought it to the US in the form of the Sears Video Arcade 2. And I have the original 2800, and I made a video just talking about the history of that console. And one of the things that's really interesting about that console is the controller. So obviously Atari systems of the time either came with a joystick, well, the 2600, which the 2800 is based upon, of course, came with joysticks and paddles, and obviously you use the joysticks for up, down, left and right, or you could plug the paddles in and you had a rotary control that you could twist and rotate and use it for like steering in a racing game or whatever. Because they were kind of the two most popular arcade controls of the time. And what they did with the 2800 was they actually combined both of those into one joystick. So you hold the joystick in your hand and you can move it left, right, up and down like a normal joystick. It has a fire button on it as well. But you could also twist the stick on the top and use that as a rotary controller or a spinner, as they're often known in the trade. And of course, the sticks for these are quite rare, really. And Lee really liked the look of it, and he sent me this message, and he said, "Oh, I'd like to have a go at making a modern reproduction of that joystick, kind of a modern take on it." And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Quite happy to send you one. I've got a few of them." So I sent him the joystick, and we've had a bit of an ongoing kind of back and forth with it. And Lee, he is a real genius when it comes to 3D printing stuff and PCB design stuff, and just fabricating stuff from scratch using those various sorts of interconnected disciplines. And it's all kind of culminated in this video that's just been released, where he's built his own replica from scratch of the 2800 stick. It has some modern improvements, obviously better switches and stuff. Than the horrible old stuff that's cheap stuff that Atari were using at the time. And it's a really fantastic video. And we did a bit of an intro together as well, where, he came up with the whole concept. I just kind of recorded a couple of bits for it as well. I don't want to spoil it, but it's quite a funny concept as well. And Lee's a really entertaining guy. So I just wanted to give him a bit of a shout out, because obviously that was something that I was involved with. It's my latest collaboration. And I just thought it was really creative and really clever. So I'll link that in the usual places. And if you want to go and check that out, obviously after you've finished listening to the Ramble, of course. And I'll see if I can remember to give you a bit of a reminder at the end. But that's a whole half an hour away. So who knows? My brain, as you know, is all over the place at all times. Anyway, right. So I want to talk about the end of an era, really, because literally a man has just left my house, a man called Richard. Now, as you will know from previous rambles, or maybe not if this is your first time, my wife Catherine and I are beekeepers, and we have, or had, a beehive in our back garden, which was all her idea. It was basically inspired by some childhood friends of her mum, who she went to visit in Germany many, many years ago, who had beehives in their garden. And we've kept these bees quite happily over the years. We've always been kind of very sort of organic and hands-off and stuff. But unfortunately, last year, Catherine developed quite a severe allergic reaction to the bees, to bee stings. And unfortunately, if you are a beekeeper and if you have a beehive in your back garden, as you can imagine, getting stung is, your chances of getting stung are higher than they are for the average person. And of course, we couldn't take the risk. There was a risk that she could go into anaphylactic shock, and she was prescribed an EpiPen and stuff. So unfortunately, it's not a risk that we can take anymore. And it does mean that we'll get a lot more use out of the garden this summer as well, which is always nice. We've got some nice raised beds and things where we grow fruits and vegetables and things, and we can really make the most of them this year. But end of an era. The guy that came to pick them up, a chap called Richard, and he has just started this new organisation called the Bee Helpers. And I was talking to him for ages on the phone earlier in the week, and again when he showed up just now. And our philosophies are very much aligned and very much on the same wavelength. He's been self-employed for most of his life. He actually worked in urban planning, and he was very big on kind of pushing like sustainable initiatives, wild spaces on sort of council land, and sort of not mowing bits of disused land and letting sort of wildflower meadows crop up and that kind of thing. And he's now reaching retirement age, and he's kind of started this new organisation where he basically places beehives on bits of disused land. So if you're a local council or I don't know, a big corporate or whatever, and you've got a bit of spare land, you can contact him and say, oh, I don't like to, I've got this spare bit of land. Do you want to put some beehives on there? And the bees, of course, benefit the local flora and pollinate everything, as bees do, as we've certainly found as they've been living in our garden over the past few years. And it's this beneficial, symbiotic, natural relationship. And he was talking to me about this Ikigai thing, which is a book that was quite big a few years ago, and I actually read it myself at the time, which is it's a Japanese concept about finding your purpose in life and all of that kind of hippie stuff, which I was very much into. I should probably give it another read, actually. I think it's the kind of book that people could benefit from rereading every few years. And he was saying that that was his Ikigai, so to speak, his purpose in life. Doing his bit for nature, and he spent his whole life kind of trying to promote that, and now in retirement, he wants to go all in and starts sort of helping people out by placing these beehives. And our hive specifically, so basically what we did was I closed off the entrance to the hive last night. Obviously all the bees go in overnight. Close the entrance off and kind of duct tape a bit of wood over it. They're perfectly fine in there for 24 hours, even up to sort of 48 hours. It's really not a problem. And then he came about lunchtime today and strapped the hive up with some straps. Obviously, don't want it falling apart when you're carrying it around. That could be absolutely catastrophic. And we kind of stuffed it into the back of his Peugeot hatchback thing, and he took all of our other kind of beekeeping bits away as well. And they've gone to a microbrewery, oddly enough. This local microbrewery contacted him. Obviously, they're kind of growing the ingredients, the hops, and I don't know how beer is made, but they're growing all the ingredients there, and they wanted some bees kind of on site, kind of pollinate all of the plants and things that they're using to make this beer. And they got in touch with him, and that's where our bees are going. They're going to need a bit of maintenance. He knows that. I've explained the situation in great detail, so they need a bit of care and attention because they've been a little bit neglected, but certainly very healthy bees, and I'm sure they will benefit the local population. And once they're established and installed, he's going to let me know, and we're going to pop over there and hopefully have some nice beers, and maybe even take my bee suit and go and check out our bees installed in their final location. What could be better? What could be better than beer and bees? Obviously, I'll have to kind of keep the wife away from them, but hey, if it's a microbrewery, she'll be driving anyway, so it's all good. So yeah, a little bit sad, but I'm really, really pleased that they've gone to a good home. We were talking about sort of trying to sell them to like a big commercial beekeeper and try and, because I've put quite a lot of money into this hobby over the years. It's you'd be surprised all of the kind of bits and bobs that you need to buy over the years when you're a beekeeper. But in the end, it's just good that they've gone to a good home, and they're kind of with someone who's on my wavelength, and that they're going to continue to be living a very kind of organic and hands off, and in this hippie-like environment, benefiting the local land and whatnot. So very cool to see. Very nice. So, unfortunately, no more beekeeping videos on my second channel. Although I think I've only actually done the one anyway. And I think in that video, I do make quite a big thing about saying, this is going to be a big year for beekeeping, and I'm going to be making loads of videos about it. And then inevitably, that ended up being the one and only one. But maybe I'll get some video footage when I go to see them. So I talked about some actual news in the news, some gaming-related news last week, which I won't go over again. But I spotted something come up on Twitter yesterday, which really amused me, and I wanted to talk about. I think I'm going to start talking about some more kind of current news and things going on within the industry and within the hobby in these episodes. Not gonna be the predominant focus of things, but these things will pop up and they'll take my interest. So Retro Dodo tweeted that McDonald's in China are doing quite an interesting promotion, a very limited edition promotion, to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the chicken nugget. Now, you may be wondering how this relates to retro gaming and retro computing and stuff. Well, what they've come up with the official Tetris company, and this is an officially licensed thing, is a plastic chicken nugget with a screen on it that you can play Tetris on. Yes, it's a chicken nugget Tetris. Now you can play Tetris on a chicken nugget. And so basically you buy your nuggets, and you can also choose to purchase this limited edition Tetris nugget with your nuggets. I presume it comes, well, I know it comes in a separate box. It doesn't come in there with all the grease and everything else. But it comes in a separate box, which is styled after the actual nugget box that McDonald's use. And it has the official Tetris company logos and things on it. Like I said, it's an officially licensed product. And it comes with like a stylish carrying pouch as well, if you want to carry your nugget around with you and play Tetris on the go. And yeah, it looks like a very basic, just LCD style game. I'm sure you know the sort. It's got a bit of a D-pad and the rotate button on it to rotate the pieces, just like the original game. A couple of people have commented that it's got too many columns, or it's not a one-to-one recreation of the original game. To those people, I will say it's Tetris on a chicken nugget. I'm sure they weren't striving for authenticity with the gameplay. It's just the novelty value, isn't it? Very cool thing. And apparently they basically cost the equivalent of $4.25, which is, I don't even know how much that is nowadays. Is that around £4? It's nothing. And there are ways of buying them, and people outside of China getting hold of them. So I might be interested in trying to obtain one of those and maybe having a look at it on the channel, because I think that would be quite amusing. Not a regular at McDonald's, as I'm sure you can probably guess. It doesn't fit in with my my CrossFit hippie ethos. All of that kind of stuff, all that pretentious rubbish. But do enjoy a nug from time to time. Nice box of nugs, and if they came with a game of Tetris, then that would be even better. So hopefully they'll launch that promotion outside of China. But if not, I'll have to see if I can try to obtain one. At the very least, if they could launch it in Japan, and then maybe I could get one of the Japanese auction sites. That would be nice. And McDonald's is surprisingly big in Japan, and they have a surprisingly interesting menu as well. They've got some really unique and interesting stuff there. But not something that I'm really qualified to talk about in any great detail. I think we went to McDonald's once when we were in Japan, and that was to get a Gouda-Tama McFlurry, which had like caramel sauce in it. You can't beat a nice McFlurry, can you? And unlike McDonald's in the rest of the world, the Japanese take great pride in their McDonald's, and their ice cream machines evidently work, which apparently they don't in the rest of the world. So yes, Tetris on a chicken nugget. If that's something that interests you, pop over to mainland China and you can pick one up for around $4. Oh, it also comes with stickers that you can stick on it to customize it. I realized that I probably should have mentioned that earlier when I was talking about the various features of the nugget, but I've only just spotted it in my notes, so there you go. And on that whole fitness note, there was another thing that I wanted to talk about as well, because I was driving home from work. I work, well, my wife works at a company that I also do some contract work for, and we were driving home together last night, and I said, I really fancy going for a run. Now, I used to be into running in a really big way. I used to do half marathons. I think I should have checked, shouldn't I? But I think I've run 6 half marathons in my lifetime. I've run 1 full marathon. So a full one is 26.2 miles, half is obviously 13.1. I've run a few sort of competitive 10Ks over the years as well. And we used to very regularly, pretty much every week, religiously for a couple of years, we used to do the park run. So if you're not familiar with the concept of the park run, it's quite big in the UK. It's 9 a.m. every Saturday morning in local parks across the country. Basically, it's a free 5K timed run. You get a barcode, so you can sign up on the website for free. You get a barcode, which we either print off, or I bought a wristband that had it sort of professionally printed on. You show up at 9 a.m., you run your 5K, they log your time, and then you can go onto a website and you can see all of your previous times. It's not a competitive thing at all. It's not people, it's not a race to see who's the fastest or anything like that. Plenty of people show up and they walk it. I remember there was a guy who was quite sort of famous locally who used to go to ours because he was, I think he was in his 90s, and he showed up every week, and he walked the course, and it was kind of his way of getting out of the house and getting some sort of local, interacting with the local community. And I know volunteered as well. I think it actually ended up being in the paper for his volunteering as well. Really nice sort of volunteer run thing. Anyway, that's the park run. That's kind of off topic, but got into that in a really big way a few years back. Decided I wanted to run longer distances. Started running 10Ks, then started doing half marathons, and I did a marathon. And then in October 2021, I ran my last ever half marathon, which was the local Leicester half marathon. Absolutely miserable day. Of course, October 21 was kind of the tail end of COVID and all of that stuff. And things were still picking up. And a lot of people were kind of put off going to these big events with lots of people and things. So it was their worst turnout they've ever had in the history of the Leicester Half Marathon. And it was not the first time I've run it. I think have I run it once or twice before? But anyway, weather was absolutely horrific, lashing it down the entire time. Barely any people there, and it was miserable. But I raised over 600 quid for the local cancer charity. So well worth doing, and quite nice to get back into running again. I don't know what my time was. It wouldn't have been anything too impressive. It would have been probably over 2.5 hours, something like that. And that's the last time I ran outside, October 2021, and it's now May 2023. And driving home from work, and I said, I fancy going for a run tonight. And when I got home, I put my shorts and my running shoes and my running top on and went out for a run, and ended up doing 10K, as you do, which is 6.2 miles for those of you in Imperial Land. And actually at quite a reasonable pace as well. So 1 hour, 8 minutes and 40 seconds. So I think my previous, when I was kind of running regularly, I think my previous PB, my personal best, was 51 something, getting on for 52 minutes. So an hour and 8, getting on for an hour and 9. It's actually not bad at all for someone who's completely out of practice and completely unfit. And I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, it's so nice running around where I live. It's very rural, and there's a route that I do that I call the 4 Villages 10K Challenge, as I have it logged on Strava. And it's a route where basically I run out of our village, and then it kind of goes around the footpaths and stuff, and it goes through some fields. There's one section of road, but it's like a rural country lane, and I only ever see maybe one car, maybe 2 if it's busy as I'm running down there. So not a big fan of running on the road with cars and stuff. And through around farmers' fields and through these nice villages and churches in rural England, a really nice place to run. It's quite hilly, don't get me wrong, but and I really, really enjoyed it, and I want to get back into running again. My Fitbit did completely screw me over. I got about 2.5 kilometres in, I think, and then it popped up on screen that it couldn't get a GPS connection, and that the GPS was shutting down and it wasn't going to track the run, which was very annoying. But actually, it seems it knows my stride length and stuff, and by the time I got to the end of the route, the distance was about right, which was quite surprising, especially for modern technology. But there you go. So I might apply for another half marathon, or maybe even another marathon at some point. But baby steps. I don't want to get too over enthusiastic about the whole thing. Interesting development, and it all started a few years ago. It was a friend of mine who was really obsessed with these park runs, and he was really going on about it and really kind of pushing me to do one. And I'd never really done any kind of fitness whatsoever. I wasn't unfit. or unhealthy or anything like that. I just had never really done any kind of sort of sport or exercise or anything. And he kind of pushed me to read this book, which was called Born to Run. Really good book. Can't remember the name of the author. Again, it's something I should have put in my notes, but really good book called Born to Run, which is about sort of the history of humanity and running, or at least that's kind of how it's kind of how it's presented, and kind of the main sort of focal point of the story. It talks about this tribe in Mexico who basically do these ultra marathons, and it's a way of kind of obviously they're living a kind of a more modern lifestyle nowadays, but thousands of years ago they'd have had to have run these hundreds of miles through the mountains and stuff to hunt for food. Humans being persistence hunters who can outrun a deer or whatever for days on end until it gets exhausted, and then spend a couple of days carrying it back to camp to feed the family and whatnot. And that's kind of why humans, and that was how humans lived for thousands and thousands of years, and that's kind of why we're adapted to running, and in particular long distance running, and it's why it's kind of what we do best. But yeah, any kind of running is good. 5K, 10K, half marathons, whatever you want to do. Not sure I'd want to do an ultra. 150, some of them are like 150 miles, aren't they? I mean, that's perhaps a little bit excessive. But hats off to the people that do. It's quite a feat of human perseverance. But anyway, I'm not here to preach to you about fitness, of course. I was just particularly pleased with myself for getting back on it, and maybe it will turn back into a thing that I do. Certainly good for the old physical and the mental fitness, mental health as well. Getting outside and getting offline for a bit. Very meditative experience, I think, running. You're kind of alone with your thoughts in the middle of nowhere. But anyway, back onto channel talk and retro gaming, retro computing talk, which I'm sure is what you're here for. I released a video this week. Not all that unusual. I release a video, most weeks. But this one was all about the N64, which is quite off topic for my channel. The Nintendo N64. Of course, games console famously released back in 1996 or early 97 here in the UK. And of course, I tend to cover Atari stuff on Control-Alt-Reese. And this was really my first experience with the N64. My best friend when I was a kid, his little brother actually had one when they were new. And I do vaguely remember playing like Mario Kart and GoldenEye with him, but he was quite annoying, as little brothers tend to be. So we tended to sort of shy away from that and kind of leave him to it. My multiplayer experiences at the time were actually kind of PC-based. I was very much, I'll talk about this in the video, but we were very much a computer family rather than a games console family. I had a Game Boy, but that was pretty much it. And all of my gaming experiences at the time were PC based. And it was very much a golden age for PC gaming, the 90s, with the first kind of 3D accelerator cards, the Voodoo cards and stuff like that. And it's all stuff that we had at one point or another, obviously sound cards and the kind of beginnings of PC gaming as it is today. And my experiences of multiplayer with that friend basically consisted of my dad's old work laptop, which I'd somehow managed to get my hands on and claim as my own. And I used to go around his house on a Friday night and we'd connect it up to his PC using a serial cable, and we'd play Doom or Red Alert. And we played Big Red Racing, if you remember that game. And we'd play dial-up games. Fortunately, we were in the same area code phone-wise, and there were like phone tariffs at the time where you got free local calls, so we could actually play modem games and stuff, sort of in those very early internet days when you would directly dial someone's house and play a game that way. So I played absolutely loads of Red Alert and Doom and like I say, Big Red Racing and various games like that. I think Quake. I think the Quake was out, and I think our home PC was powerful enough to run it, but that laptop wasn't, so we didn't play that. And it had a really awful, if you remember those DSTN screens that those kind of early 90s laptops had, really slow and really kind of smeary and dark and not good at all for fast action-based games. Red Alert was okay. But I think those screens were basically sort of predominantly designed with like spreadsheets and things in mind. But anyway, that's off topic, of course, as always. What else would you expect from me? But the N64, as a result of all this, was a console that passed me by. I think the first console that I really sort of properly had for myself on my own. We did get a Mega Drive, which was like a hand-me-down from my cousins, but it wasn't sort of current at the time. But I think the first console that I kind of had for my own, for myself, was probably the Dreamcast. And even that wasn't current when I got it. I mean, it was a very short-lived console anyway. But yeah, by the time I got one, they'd kind of been discontinued and it was all kind of winding down. And then the next one I got was the original Xbox. So fun to check out a Nintendo console. Obviously, I had friends who had, the NES and the SNES at the time. This is a ramble, so I can say SNES properly and not have to say SNES like I do in a video. Because people get really upset about the way that you say things in videos. If you say things the British way and you say, oh, this game started on the SNES, you get a load of Americans saying, oh, that's a SNES. And if you say SNES like I did, I'm sure I'll inevitably get a load of British people saying, oh, why are you saying it the American way? You can't please everybody, and that's part and parcel of making YouTube videos. So in this video, I got this N64, which I imported from Japan, and I modified it to make the video output work with modern TVs. So not to go into too much detail, because the video's there if you want to watch it, and of course I will link it in the usual places. But when Nintendo released the N64, the video output wasn't actually as good as the SNES, the console that came before it. They removed the RGB video output for some bizarre reason, known only to Nintendo. So there's a small circuit that you can install which reinstates that video output, and then you can go one step further, and there are a couple of modern solutions to install an HDMI output, which of course is what modern TVs and monitors use, and so I thought I'd install both. I've actually come across videos of people installing one or the other in the console, but I thought, well, why not both, as the famous meme says. And I installed them side by side, and they both work quite happily side by side. And I now have an N64, as well as I've got a brand new power supply, which I didn't mention at all in the video, because that was quite boring. I got that and a region free mod as well, so obviously it can play US import games. So I basically put together the ultimate Nintendo 64 console, and what better way to experience it today in the 21st century and kind of discover that console and discover some of the awesome games on that console. And there are some really great games. I went searching for sort of people's most kind of recommended games, top rated games on that system, and spent a good few evenings just sort of playing through a load of them, and had a really good time of it. So really interesting system. Obviously, unlike say the Jaguar, which I'm a lot more familiar with, it had the analog stick. I don't even know. I'm not sure about timelines and things, so forgive me. But I think obviously the PlayStation, which was kind of a direct competitor with the N64, had analog sticks, but I don't know if it actually launched with those. Maybe it did, but I remember some of the early PlayStation controllers not having those. And there were analog options for the Jag, like the spinner controls and stuff, but they weren't sort of standard, and the Jag had kind of fizzled out before it could gain any traction. Just really interesting discovering the N64. And obviously, like, I'm from an Atari background. My very first gaming experiences were with the Atari 2600. And then we had the Atari ST, of course. And I've been a big Atari fan ever since. And Nintendo, absolutely massive, and such a big part of people's lives, and so fondly remembered by so many people. And not something I really have a lot of experience with. Like I said, I had my Game Boy. And then later on, as an adult, I got a Wii and a DS when they were current. And we do have a Switch in the house now, although it's technically my wife's. But yeah, those kind of early Nintendo consoles. I went through a bit of a phase of discovering the Famicom, which of course was the NES here in the Western world. I'm now in the process of slowly sort of selling off my Famicom collection on eBay. Now I'm kind of done with that, and I don't really play with it anymore. I play a lot of that stuff on the Mister now, because it's kind of all sort of perfectly, I'm going to say, emulated on there. I know that's going to upset some people, but I play a lot of that kind of 8 and 16-bit era stuff on there now, and it's just so much more convenient and so much more reliable. Much as I love tinkering with the original hardware, actually playing games on it is, I can quite happily live without. I'm quite happy to play those games in other ways, and I don't think I'm really missing out by using something like the Mister rather than the original hardware. But anyway, that's all completely off topic. Oh, there is an N64 core coming for the Mister. There you go. That's tied that neatly back in, hasn't it? Which is under development, and apparently it's. I don't have any notes on this. There's a bit of a recurring theme, isn't it? But it's a developer who's been heavily involved with Mister and developed some other very successful cores on there. So I'm sure he'll get it working. And it's also working on an emulator as well as kind of like a proving ground and a kind of proof of concept for this core. Really, really sort of interesting looking stuff. So when that finally comes to the Mister, and I'm sure it will be eventually. I'm sure it won't be tomorrow. It'll be nice to sort of play those N64 games with some of those modern features like the modern video output and upscaling and shader options and all the nice stuff that comes along with that. So that video is on Control-Alt-Reese. If you want to see me, you want to hear my life story, my history of consoles, the reasons why I never got to play with the N64 as a kid, and see me very briefly modify. I didn't like to focus too much on the actual mod side of things because you can go out there and there are so many other channels that do modifying consoles and upgrading them and adding sort of modern options to them, modern conveniences. And I think those channels do a lot better job of that than me. And I think that kind of stuff it's quite involved to record and it adds a huge amount of overhead. So, I just pointed the camera at it and just sort of did it. Added some clips just to show what I'd done, just to kind of show the process for anyone who's sort of interested, and then I kind of point people in the direction of some other videos where they show that in a lot more detail. And I think that's quite a good approach for me personally going forward. Like I say, other channels out there that do a very thorough job of that already. And the main thing for me is kind of the personal journey and the personal story, and some quick reviews of some games that some people may have heard of. And it's really surprising, actually, the amount of people who kind of watch my channel and who are in my community who have had very much the same experience. Either people who owned the N64 back in the day who were like, oh, it's nice to see, nice to see your thoughts and your opinions on it as someone who's completely new to it. But most of them are people who know absolutely nothing about it, like me. May have played on one once or twice in their lifetime, but don't know what any of the games are like, or don't have any nostalgia for it. And it's nice to take people on that journey, isn't it? As kind of a personal journey as well. And I think that's more important than kind of the modding side of things, from my point of view, with the kind of stories that I want to tell on my channel. But yeah, anyway, I think that's enough of a ramble for today. The weather is absolutely glorious, lovely and sunny outside. So I'm going to mow the lawn for the first time in years without having to worry about getting attacked by bees. Not that they've ever been vicious bees or anything like that, but I'm quite looking forward to going out there in my shorts and mowing the grass. And don't forget to check out that Lee Smith's Workshop video that obviously I worked with him on. Very cool video. I will link to that in the usual places, along with everything else that I've mentioned in this ramble. So I just want to wish you a fantastic bank holiday weekend if you're here in the UK, or a fantastic sort of end to your weekend if you are elsewhere. I'm off to do some gardening, and I will hopefully talk to you next week. Oh, and subscribe to Control-Alt-Reese.